570%. This is what we are going to be talking about today, and the journey that we at Agile have been through to not only increase the frequency of our releases, but how we have also managed to do this without compromising on quality and uptime. My name is Tagari, and I am the CTO at Agile, and I have Andy Pass, our Agile Practices Lead, where over the next 30 minutes, I will be leading you through our journey and how we measured success, with Andy taking you through our Devops Toolchain and how we've used automation throughout our software development lifecycle. Our journey may be unique to Agile, but I am certain that there will be learnings that you will be able to take away and apply to accelerate your own bespoke DevOps journey. So firstly, who is Agile? Agile is one of the juggernauts of UK's financial services sector. We are listed on the FTSE 250, headquartered in Manchester, and we have offices in London and Bristol. In essence, we offer an online platform for our customers to manage their pensions, portfolios, and investments, providing access to the major stock exchanges around the world. We cater for both the advised as well as the direct-to-consumer or retail segments of the market. Our platform propositions are Agile Invest Center for the advised and Agile You Invest for our direct-to-consumers. We are also currently building two brand new digital-only platform propositions in both of these segments, Touch by Agile and Dodl by Agile. Dodl is all about simplifying the user experience and engaging customers who may be hesitant or even scared with getting into the world of investments. We are not only simplifying the customer experience, we are also simplifying the engineering processes that sit behind Dodl using the practices that we have developed, which we are to share with you today. So, what made us start this journey? Probably the same reasons many of you have faced or are facing, where the business have this insatiable appetite for change, and yet technology are simply not delivering fast enough. Does that sound familiar? I can see a few nods. So, my story starts just over 2 years ago, having joined Agile, with sitting down with the different teams in technology, from developers, testers, centralized DevOps, to infrastructure, architects, and IT security, to really understand the change process. I also sat with the business to understand their pain points and to get their take on why they think the situation was the way it was. And 4 key themes came out of this exercise. 1, there was no real alignment of development resources to our core product lines, which meant there was no drivers to improve the change process. 2, there was a lack of standards across engineers where modern tooling and pipeline automation was absent. 3, our deployment process was manual, where release notes were created by developers and handed over to a centralized DevOps team, who didn't have insights into the change as they were not part of the change. Yet, this same team was then held responsible to fix any issues post-deployment. And lastly, we had big bang releases. We were agile, yet all changes were being deployed during a coordinated release window every 2 weeks on a Sunday night, 11 p.m., which was typically followed by a flurry of issues come Monday morning. This was more waterfall disguised as agile, or wagile as we like to call it. So this practice has led to a fear of change within the business, resulting in fewer releases as a mechanism to improve stability. The reality was that we were accumulating more change, deploying an even larger release every 2 weeks, increasing risk. So we ended up in a position where the ability to deliver quickly diminished, trust with the business was eroding, which was just resulting in frustrations all around. So let me walk you through our journey as to what have we done and where do we stand today, having achieved a 570% increase in our release frequency. So having understood the situation, a key part of the technology strategy was the need to improve our engineering processes and toolings. We stood up a dev modernization working group made up of key individuals from the change process, whose objective was to derive a single Agile software development practice. This working group was actually a great forum to listen directly to the engineers, where we had diversity of thought and understand what it is they would need to come up with something that was specific to us at Agile. There were 6 key requirements the working group came up with. 1, we need to change our life cycle where we remove manual gatekeepers and replace with guardrails to streamline our engineering processes with the ability to deploy change as and when we want. 2, there was a need to automate governance by shifting left with aspects of testing, change release management and observability by using the right tools. 3rd, we needed to build quality and security into our pipelines. We needed to improve test coverage by implementing quality gates and break bills if new changes did not meet test coverage thresholds, ensuring we always strive to improve. There was a need to integrate with security tools to scan code, libraries, open source software, and block deployments where critical vulnerabilities were identified, improving our security posture. What was also key here was a change in the engineer's mindset where collaboration across teams, including IT security, that team that typically likes to say no and most developers avoid, was required, as the objective here was to shift left, not dump left. 4, we needed to reduce risk during the release process by setting up end-to-end pipelines, complete with automated post-deployment validation checks and automated rollbacks to gain confidence with moving away from the big bang Sunday night releases. 5, there was an ask from the engineers to reduce our management overhead by integrating with tools like Topdesk, providing visibility into our change management process. And lastly, there was a need to be able to measure progress with key metrics that we would be comfortable sharing organization-wide. So to summarize, the goal was to strive for continuous delivery without compromising on stability, quality, security, and governance, which could all be measured. An early finding from the working group was also a need to have a consistent set of tools to improve communication, collaboration, and visibility of work across our engineers and business. So a decision was made with migrating all teams away from legacy tools and standardized to Jira and Confluence. This proved to be a crucial decision, which I will refer back to when I share how we measured success. So, having set up this dev modernization working group, we needed a team to execute upon their requirements. And so, we stood up a new automation engineering team, which was separate to the existing centralized DevOps team. The purpose of this new team was to collaborate and create the new engineering process without any distractions of the day-to-day. So this team bought in and POC'd numerous tools like SonarQube, Sneak, K6, Aquasec, Cypress, Nexus, and the list goes on. But they only integrated those that worked for us into our specific Agile pipelines, which have now streamlined our deployments, minimized overhead and governance, and increased our release cadence with quality and security checks embedded as guardrails. You may well ask, well, why didn't the centralized DevOps team do this? They wanted to, but their bandwidth was entirely consumed with handling the business as usual across all of our product lines. This needed to continue, as however inefficient the process was, some change delivery for the business was better than none. How we solve for this, I will go into next. So as technologists, we are here to partner with the business on determining, deriving, and delivering the strategy and vision. You can have all the best processes and tools in place, but if the change organization is not structured appropriately, inefficiencies, bureaucracy, and blockers will bed in and hinder your ability to deliver on the business strategy with speed. This is what we were suffering from. So to create the right level of accountability we required, an iterative restructure of our change organization took place, eventually becoming product aligned over time. So how do we do this? Well, we started from a position where we had clear accountability at the business product level, but this was missing when it came to technology, where broadly we had a large group of developers and a large group of testers. A team was formed respective for each product line, but no one person was being held accountable to improve the technology inefficiencies. The number of resources and the makeup of the team could also change depending on who shouted the loudest. So what we did was first create alignment and accountability where we had developers and testers dedicated to the product line with respective technical lead as the owner. Once we worked out some of the kinks, We then roll the same change across all the remaining product lines, working closely with the product owners. Next, the automation engineering team worked with each of the teams to upskill and adopt the new engineering practices and help build automated pipelines as per the working group requirements. We also invested in and trained all of our manual testers who are now proficient in test automation. And over time, as these teams took on the ownership from development to deployments, this created bandwidth for the centralized DevOps team, which we then broke out and integrated into respective product-aligned teams, working towards a true DevOps culture. This then created the capacity within the teams to focus on aspects of observability, where we use tools such as Sentry, Greylog, and UpsGenie, enabling the teams to become proactive when it came to preventing, detecting, and responding to incidents, improving the overall user experience of our platform. We will not stop here. We will continue to tweak our organization as we look to collaborate and integrate aspects of infrastructure, application support, and security into these product-aligned teams. So all of these iterative changes of people, process, and tools, as well as listening to our engineers, has led to a higher release cadence, a reduction in our overheads, and a stable platform for our customers. I have now set the scene of where Agile was and how we have worked through our challenges to where we stand today, having increased our release frequency. Andy will now dive into the specific technologies and tools used to build our Devops Toolchain and how it helped accelerate our goals and objectives. And I will be back to show how we measure success. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Mo. So, as Mo touched on, we've been on a journey relentlessly trying to improve our processes. I'm going to talk to you about two aspects of this today. Firstly, our Devops Toolchain, what issues we had, how we look to address these, and why Atlassian's tools gave us a central pillar with which to connect the dots. Secondly, we'll look at how we use an automation-first approach to ensure ease of use, and ultimately, give back time to our teams driving productivity. But first, let's look at our Devops Toolchain. So as with most organisations, we quickly realised that in order to enable us to move at speed, we need to make changes across a variety of areas and empower our teams to take control of their own destinies. We realised that if we wanted our teams to deploy more frequently, then we need to make the process as painless as possible. And as a financial institution, we'd also need to balance this with the appropriate change controls to meet our regulatory commitments, whilst also enabling a faster pace of change for our customers. So how did we do this? Well, we based our change ecosystem around Atlassian's tools. We used Jenkins for orchestration of our deployments, and this was an important decision for us to make. It was made based on pre-existing expertise in the organisation, along with the tool's ease of use and its flexibility. Using Jenkins also allowed us to set up a shared library of functions for our pipelines, which all our teams can contribute to. And then we looked to get as much visibility as possible, utilising a variety of tools, giving us a clear picture of the state of our services, enabling our teams to make the right decisions and react quickly if any issues arose following a failed deployment. So as Mo mentioned, we switched to Jira and Confluence around 2 years ago. At that time, we migrated the entire tech organisation across, and we also took a lot of historical data from an old platform. Now, doing this enabled us to start visualising our workflows a lot better and crucially begin to connect the dots throughout our software development lifecycle. We currently use Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket, and we're in the process of expanding to UpsGenie as well to further enhance our visibility across our estate. These tools have really helped us to start driving innovation within tech services, as they gave us a solid base on which to comfortably build from. And this is something that's been visible and recognised by our CEO, Andy Bell. Now, the Atlassian tools provide us a great central pillar, but ultimately the value that we get from them is how they better enable our teams to focus on the job at hand, which is, of course, and I'm sure you'd all agree, delivering value to our customers. So alongside the Atlassian tools, which you can see here, we also use a variety of other tools, some of which are mentioned on this slide. Now, these have enabled us to get the following: ownership of our deployment pipelines via Jenkins, and the ability for our testers to take complete ownership of any production deployment. They've helped us embed security at the core of our change process via Sneak, giving us confidence that whatever we're deploying is safe and secure. And then automated quality gates via Sonar Cube were really important early on in helping giving us visibility, as one of the things we did was shift to test-driven development. Now, this was something that was a fundamental culture shift for a lot of our developers, some of which didn't initially understand the value which it could bring. Having this visibility in the associated gates helped us to ensure that test coverage was increasing, and through the KPIs that we'll talk about later, we were able to clearly demonstrate the value that it was bringing. Now, this really helped to get our teams bought into this new mindset and way of working. So what did we look to improve? Well, the changes we made weren't done overnight, and one of the core principles that we took into this journey was that it would be a collaborative and not a dictatorship. This ensured that everyone had a voice, and that as we took steps to improve our ways of working and pipelines, that teams using those day-to-day helped to design them, and this greatly helped to speed up adoption and empower our developers. So some of the things we looked to do were move away from release branches and strive where possible to do trunk-based development, taking advantage of feature toggles, and this has ultimately led to us being able to get rid of the need for release notes. And then we shifted testing left where possible, reducing the cost of failure and also opening opportunities to automate more testing and introduce quality gates with tools such as Sonar Cube and Sneak. And then where possible, we have a minimum of 2 people for each code review. And this is something we've enforced in Bitbucket. Now, importantly here, we encourage our developers to feed back to each other and be open and honest with that feedback, which has helped to greatly reduce knowledge silos and also upskill our teams. So let me talk you through in a bit more detail what one of our pipelines looks like and the visibility we've got in Jira. So a lot of our teams use the same basic Jenkins pipeline, and we have a shared library which is used to roll out any improvements, and with this the teams can simply pull down the latest version into their repository and they'll instantly have the latest functionality in their pipelines. This has led to a much easier rollout and functionality for our teams. Now I'm going to take you through a pipeline which is run on the merge of a pull request and can deploy straight through into production. Let's take a look. So, it first runs some static code checks, and at this stage we also have a built-in security gate via Sneak, and we also run our unit tests. Next, it then builds the code and scans the container artifacts using AquaSec. This gives us a lot of faith and confidence that what we're deploying into our environments is safe and secure. Next, we deploy it into our QA environment. So here it's the deploy to QA step that actually moves any relevant Jira tickets into our manual testing queue. This gives us great confidence that whatever is in the queue has been deployed successfully and also passed some basic checks. We also at this stage run a series of end-to-end tests in the same environment before then doing some manual testing. Next, we have the deploy to production, and this is a manual step where the testers go into Jenkins and quickly select what they want to deploy and go ahead. So why a manual deployment step here? Well, we're not quite ready to have this automated end-to-end, and we wanted that additional confidence and check. Finally, we run some end-to-end checks in production before the pipeline finishes. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier was around getting visibility across teams and what is deployed where, when, and by whom. We've been able to do this via a combination of using the existing functionality between Jira and Bitbucket, and also by sending all our deployments back to Jira, meaning that it's easy to click on a change and a ticket and see what commits are logged, who approved a pull request, who tested the change, and then what deployments it's had and who deployed these. And thanks to automation for Jira, we can also see what change reference it links to, and we'll talk about this more in the next section. One of the core principles we had for our journey was that we wanted to take an automation-first approach to everything we did, ensuring that our teams have the maximum time to focus on delivering value to our customers and reducing the admin overhead, which for a financial institution can be quite significant. Automation for Jira has allowed us to automate a number of our governance processes and also helped us significantly reduce the admin needed for a release, allowing us to balance the needs of the business against the pace of change. I'm going to talk to you about a few of the benefits we've seen some examples of what we've been able to do. So why automate? Well, why not? So the name of this talk is how did AJ Bell make DevOps a Dodl? In other words, how did we make DevOps as easy as possible for our teams? We said at the start that we significantly increased our pace of change over 18 months by 570%. This is possible in a very large part to the people delivering change and their willingness and drive to improve. But it's also down just to how easy it is to deploy a change to production. Now, I've talked around our pipelines and some of the connections we've been able to make between tools in order to drive efficiencies. But ultimately, without the ability to automate key processes and the deployment of code to production, we'd be greatly restricted to what we could do. At best, our teams can deploy multiple times a day across multiple repositories, all without compromising the change controls you'd expect to see in a financial organization. Let's look at some of the examples of how we've done this. Mo touched on earlier about having a dedicated team driving automation help to enable change. This can't be underestimated. Having a team completely focused on helping our developers improve their day-to-day processes and work with them to automate these processes has been integral to the success of the changes we've been able to do. Let's take a look at one of these in a bit more detail. So at AJ Bell, we currently use a different application for service and incident management. This means that every release to production must have an approved change request logged in that system, which then appears in a central change calendar. Previously, teams would need to manually go into this system and create a change before then getting this approved. Using automation, we've been able to create these change requests automatically, meaning our development teams never have to go outside of Jira when releasing a change. And thanks to our automated pipelines and guardrails in place, we've been able to have most changes approved directly by our testers, with the teams with only significant changes or the activation of a new feature requiring manual approval steps. Now let's look at a bit more detail how you can use automation for Jira's functionality with web requests to connect up your different systems. This rule is for creating a change request in our change management system Topdesk. Now, by automating the creation of these, it enabled the teams to follow governance and contribute their releases to the central change calendar without ever needing to interact with Topdesk manually. So we did this by utilising the ability to send web requests automatically on the creation of a fixed version in Jira. Some conditions were wrapped around this to allow the teams to create different types of change. For if they're doing a major release, something which requires business approval, or a standard change, something that doesn't. And this is simply done by adding a couple of letters to the start of the change. Variables are then a great way to utilise aspects of the response from your API calls to then do further actions. In our example, we send an API call to Jira, adding the new change reference to the end of the version name, giving quick feedback on if the rule was successful, and crucially ensuring traceability between the two systems. Now, I've referenced previously the importance of having the right level of governance in place, something which is a regulatory commitment for us. Using the tools at your disposal, you can start to greatly increase the transparency of changes as they progress through the software development lifecycle. By doing things such as example in the last slide, we might significantly reduce the overhead for our teams on this, but we've not just done this from a developer's perspective. One example of one of the things we've done is around documentation for new features. Here, documentation for a new feature is created automatically in Confluence when an epic reaches a certain stage in the workflow. This helps roll out standards across the teams and takes away from the need for our product owners or business analysts to create this manually. We're able to do this using a combination of the REST APIs with Confluence and the ability to send web requests based on triggers in automation for Jira. The final piece of our puzzle was being able to clearly measure success or quickly get data-driven feedback on what worked and what didn't. I'll now pass you across to Mo, who can share a bit more insight into how having the right KPIs are important for the business.
Thanks, Andy. So, as the CTO, I needed to know if our strategy and the changes we were implementing was working and where we needed to reassess and pivot. I also wanted to provide a transparency to the board given the importance of this journey and the large investments being made. So by transitioning to product-aligned teams and standardizing on our set of tools allowed me to discuss and agree our key metrics with the business and baseline around 1, our frequency of change, 2, our quality of change, and 3, the number of major incidents and time to recover. This was openly communicated to all teams, challenged to get buy-in and acceptance of where we were as part of the journey, and started to set incremental targets of where we wanted to be. It was important to be open and transparent as 1, that is part of our Agile culture, and 2, sharing metrics across teams is a good thing as we can learn from the teams where rapid improvements are being made and direct help to those that it was clear adoption was slow. So following our principles of automate everything we possibly can, we apply the same here for measuring these KPIs. So given our earlier decision to move to Atlassian tools like Jira and Confluence, it was a no-brainer to use EasyBI, a plugin which ingests data from Jira, including our custom fields, allowing us to generate bespoke dashboards. These dashboards were then integrated with Confluence, providing a daily view across the organization of how we were looking, as well as the trending over time. The reports made it clear to see that we were now releasing more than ever before, and that some teams were releasing more than others. You could say that some were gaming the system by deploying smaller changes more frequently, but that's exactly what I wanted, as any deployments requires effort, and if the teams gain confidence with their pipelines and maximize on it by deploying small changes more frequently, reducing risk, then this was a huge win, moving away from the fortnightly, Sunday night big bangs. These reports also identified quality spikes, where upon investigating, found that this was typically post an environment refresh, where we can now measure the impact to the tech teams and delays to the business. As a result, we directed efforts to remediate to further improve our efficiencies. With the integration with Topdesk and Jira, we were also able to create dashboards of incidents and downtime, which showed that over time, the number of incidents were falling and the time to recover was improving, even though the number of changes being deployed was higher than ever before. These measures and trends was evidence that our overall strategy was working. These reports allowed me to show our board the tangible benefits backed by data, showing an increase in our release cadence without compromising on quality and uptime. The confidence with technology is now higher than ever before, and the conversations are now about how can we further invest in technology to improve the lives of our people, deliver a delightful customer experience, and to continue making our engineering processes a Dodl. So I'm hoping that the learnings we have shared with you today around aligning teams, listening to your engineers, modernizing processes, and the principle of automate everything you can will help you accelerate and succeed in your own bespoke DevOps journey and far exceed the 570% we had achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.